Welcome back, everybody, to Fly the Coop. This is our last episode recording of the year, and I am so lucky to have my love with me, Steve.
Aww,
the originator, sweet. Actually, of Fly the Coop. This was all his idea.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, it was.
The name at least.
Well, and even just the idea, you know.
Well, originally, yeah. I mean, it was a couple of years ago we talked about it.
Yeah. Well, you know, Steve is part of a global mastermind and has met so many amazing people from all over. And we've mentioned this before. Dan Henry was a coach and still is that we decided to work with. And I listened to a podcast with Sebastian and Dan Henry. Sebastian is the owner of Podcast Launch Lab, who hosts this this podcast. And that's how we ended up here.
Doing podcasts.
Uh-huh. And
somehow I got suckered into it. I'm not quite sure how.
Yeah. Well, you're the inspiration.
But I don't know anything about real estate.
You know so much about real estate. You advise me constantly.
I learn a lot constantly. Mm-hmm. I don't advise. I learn.
That's true. Steve always says anybody can do anything if they really want to.
And if you have opposable thumbs. Gotta have opposable thumbs.
Which is kind of how we ended up where we're at right now today, and the inspiration to Fly the Coop.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's been kind of a bit of a whirlwind.
Yeah.
Starting with, in terms of actually ending up here, Cari said we needed to remodel my kitchen.
Yes, I did.
Blink your eyes, and here we are doing podcasts. Yeah. So I don't really remember much of the in-between. Well,
there's a lot of renovation and all of that, which kind of comes full circle on life change and flying the coop, because when we met one another, we were both in a fly the coop mode, were we not?
True. Well, and I was listening to you talk to someone the other day, but you were talking about how there are so many moments throughout our lives where it really is just kind of a continuation, or not really continuation, but varied versions of flying the coop, right? Because
so true.
There's always something that causes you to do that, and it obviously relates very well to real estate, because fly the coop, you're moving, you're on the go.
Fly the coop in so many ways. I mean, life transition's a real thing for everybody, and it doesn't matter what your age is, or what you're doing for a living, or what stage in life you're in. There's a point where you are flying the coop, whether it be out of your home into a new home, which is what we do, or you perhaps leaping into a new role, a new job, leaping into maybe child rearing, having your first baby.
Chicken rearing.
Chicken rearing.
And we actually had some fly the coop. So
yeah, we did.
It's a real thing.
Which is one of the reasons what I did in the office was inspired by Steve, which was inspired by friends of ours. Steve always wanted to have an urban chicken coop. Let's just talk about that because it's so cool. And we were in the city at the time. And I'm like, he was going to build one in his yard, and it was right around COVID.
My version of a chicken coop, though, is I understand it's like lean a piece of plywood up against the house and call it good.
No, that's not aesthetically correct at all.
It's not a Cari way of doing things.
No. So. I was inspired by Williams-Sonoma. I love Williams-Sonoma, and I found this amazing coop. We'll have to throw it up on a video. And Steve's like, good God, that thing is like, I think by the time you were done, they had just raised the price to like $2,500 for this kit.
$2,500, yeah.
And there was all these complaints on it.
There were a lot of reviews. So because I was curious, so I'm looking at it and I started reading the reviews. And a lot of the reviews were saying how, people had to reinforce things. They weren't built right. There were big gaps and whatnot. And I thought, well, it looked nice, right?
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it looked pretty, but then I thought, well, I could probably build that.
Mm-hmm. That turned into quite the process.
Well, and that actually lends itself to really everything that we're doing here, whether it be this podcast or all the things, from the let's remodel your kitchen, Steve, to ending up here. None of those things, outside of like the sale of real estate and whatnot, which is obviously what you do,
right?
And the design, build, all that stuff. It's what created this environment. But so much of the process within there are things that we really didn't know how to do.
No,
and
not at all. And putting teams together goes back to that too.
All of it. And really
Mm-hmm.
in all phases of life, it's both, you're always flying the coop, but you're also, I guess, coined the term, learn as you grow.
That's
not
what we
go.
say.
Learn as you grow, because we don't know how to do a lot of these things that we're doing. But again, back to the opposable thumbs, if you've got them, you can just dig in and start doing stuff. And that's, once you start, you'll learn. And as you learn, you grow. So.
Absolutely. So we built this awesome coop in town. It's gorgeous. We brought it out here.
I'm not a builder, by the way. Far from it.
It took all summer.
Yeah.
Vetting supplies was a major problem.
I had to go to 5 different, it's an all-cedar coop. I had to go to 5 different home stores to get enough. This is when there was no wood.
Right.
You just couldn't get it anywhere. So the things that I'm picky, like I didn't want all the warp boards and whatnot, because it just makes it hard for me.
Right.
It's already hard enough for me. I'm slow.
No, you're not.
Mentally.
No, you're not. We ended up with 4. We had 4 birds in town, and we moved out here, and now we have 26 chickens out here, beautiful gourmet chickens. It's so cool. So cool.
We also had 70 meat birds that grew. I mean, and they're fantastic. Like even our hens, our egg layers, we had 15 that were actively laying up until winter. A lot of you guys may not know this, but in the wintertime, so these chickens are light-sensitive critters, right? And as the days grow shorter and it gets colder, of course, the chickens, by and large, stop laying eggs or lay very few.
Right.
Otherwise, various breeds of birds, just a quick bird education, I guess, various breeds of birds, will lay different numbers of eggs for a period of a year. Like you can buy a certain breed of bird that lays 300 eggs a year, one that, typically lays 250, but it's typically, approximately, obviously I'm rounding up, but 1 egg per bird per day. So that's not really how it goes, but
right. But
we don't get that many, but
not at all.
Yeah,
right
but
now.
so in the wintertime, like yesterday, there's 1 egg.
Right.
There's 26 birds now. Granted, the 11, what did I? We had 15. So 11 new birds.
Right.
They're too young. They won't lay until spring. But of the 15 that were laying, I got 1 egg yesterday.
Right. So if people are wondering what we do on the side when we're not managing a real estate company.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, and I'm not doing any of it, by the way.
It's an enormous amount of work.
I love being out here, and it's like a total respite, but the hardcore labor, it's all on Steve. He's managing the homestead for sure. It's a lot of work out here. So if anybody were to ever ask us, they say, oh my gosh, what an amazing lifestyle. It is an amazing lifestyle. We absolutely love it out here.
If you're willing to do a lot of work.
Got to be willing to do the work. Yeah. We love the gardens. So that was another adventure this past year that I think now we still have full clarity as we're moving forward with development on the land. Steve's been spearheading all of that. You should tell them about hugelkultur because it's so cool. It's such a cool thing. So
in a nutshell, what it means, hugelkultur is a German thing, been around for, thousands of years or whatever, but it's the process of, you burying wood, ideally like partially rotted or a mixture of kind of rotted and non-hardwoods. Because, if you think about it, like if you grow mushrooms, you go and get like an oak log or something like that if you're actually going to cultivate mushrooms. Well, this is the same sort of thought process behind it, in that you're trying to encourage fungal growth in your garden. So what we did was we dug a number of, not to be morbid, but they're kind of like graves, and they're deep, they're big, deep, long holes. We did not bury any bodies. No. We didn't do that. Not this time.
Oh, God, the dark side.
Yeah, but then we go and we drag a bunch of, there's a lot of oak trees and whatnot around here, and many of which have fallen over the years. So we drag a lot of those partially rotted trees down. We also took a bunch of buckthorn, which is a
invasive
species, and it literally has thorns. Like you run through the woods, you're going to get stabbed.
Yeah.
So as we're clearing that out, so we use it instead of just burning it or something, but we're actually trying to keep the carbon back in the soil, which is great for the plants. But it encourages fungal growth, and the fungal growth is symbiotic with the plants. So the fungus brings a lot of the minerals and whatnot out of the earth that the plant needs, and so the plant roots and the fungal growth kind of interact and serve one another in a symbiotic way. Your gardens will actually get better year after year. So like year 10, these gardens are going to be better than year 1.
Right.
Because you'll have all that decaying matter down at the bottom of the hole. So you bury the wood, and then you put a bunch of, branches, smaller things as you work up. We did a bunch of our wood chips and chicken manure.
Yeah.
And then compost, some really beautiful compost we buy locally. Because I haven't
beautiful.
had time to, my intent is to do a lot of composting here. I just haven't had time. There's been too many projects to
It's, I think it's important, like some of the ideas that we have, out of inspiration to those that love these side hobbies, you can have a very small, intimate garden in the city and really utilize the same methodology.
You could totally do it, yeah. Like I wanted to do it, or actually I want to do a video about it because we also have DIYdesignerhomestead.com.
Right.
So I wanted to do a video on that where like a blueberry plant would be ideal. Like you take one plant, so you dig, so something small.
Yeah.
Not where you're digging, grave-size holes and hauling big logs out of the woods. Because that's a little crazy, but like a blueberry plant. What a fantastic way to encourage an amazing growing blueberry plant that's going to fruit for years and years and years, and you get to enjoy it. Dig a small hole, bury some hardwood in there. Probably your neighbors have some old firewood that they haven't burned that's rotting on the side of their shed or something.
Right.
Ask to get some of that, so you can get that stuff for free.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would absolutely do that anywhere I did a garden now.
I think that the inspiration from the growth we've had together in the 5 years we've been together now, and the process of getting to where we're at now and sharing these stories really connects back to the why behind Fly the Coop. And as we're building out our side gig, which is DIY Designer Homestead, the inspiration that regardless of where you're at and how large or how small you want to scale the ideas we have, the idea of sharing information so you're growing in a positive way during a time when people need to really feel regrounded. There's just a really interesting energy, in my opinion, in the world right now. And it leaves everybody, at least we visit with, whether it be friends, family, clients, a little bit unsettled. So our inspiration in all of this was really to bring some simplicity back. And in doing that, simplicity comes work, but in a real cool way, like in a way that's very grounding. So I thought it'd be really cool because Steve has a great perspective, and I always say he shares in a way that's just so, I just think you share in such a beautiful way. I just love the way your thoughts come pouring out of you. We are on Nextdoor out here, and Steve just put a really cool post together. We have a neighbor. You should tell them the story because he's got over 500 comments now on Nextdoor over this post, just by going out and helping our neighbor with Trace, his son. Super cool.
So, and I used to do this. I used to live in St. Anthony Village, so back in the city, a northeast suburb of Minneapolis. And I learned early on, I learned when I was a kid from my dad, really kind of is the one who started me on this. But, a lot of us in the city, at least, we really didn't communicate with our neighbors. And that is sort of exacerbated when you're out here and your neighbors are so far away from you. Mm-hmm. It's not like you just see them next door and wave. You can't see them. So, but in the city, I found that I got to meet a lot of my neighbors simply by waving as they, someone drove by. It's like just that simple process. It goes from that to then eventually maybe they're on foot as opposed to just driving by. Or I've had people in a car that would actually stop and comment like, you always wave, but I've never stopped to say hello to you. And so people would stop, you get to know them, and then that leads to a relationship. And all things stem from relationships.
Absolutely.
You have a relationship with the cashier at the store, there's some kind of, even if it's a cursory one, there is always a relationship with somebody else. Out here, that's a little bit harder to do. And so, again, started with the wave. I was at the end of the driveway, getting mail or whatnot. I wave a couple times, and a gentleman stops. And stops and talks to me, introduces me to his dog in his car, and turns out he's my neighbor, our neighbor. And so we just did a holiday party here where we invited a lot of Cari Ann's team, all of her team, and neighbors and friends. We did one last year. We did another one this year. And we were slow because with all things going on, holidays, we're slow to get invites out. And so Cari Ann went to some of the neighbors personally to hand deliver the invites. And she went over to our neighbor Ed's house. And Ed is, Ed and his wife, sweet couple.
Amazing couple.
Yeah, really, really nice. But getting up there in years, and he is battling cancer and is not physically able to do as much as he would like. It has been.
And they have a mile long, not literally, but
it's
so
a really long
driveway.
Cari Ann went over there, and Ed was getting geared up to go and get a plow set up on his tractor.
At age 82, by the way.
And he's a bit frail. So he was getting geared up to do that because he wanted to plow it around his woodshed so he can get wood because he heats his house with wood. And Cari Ann said, Steve is at the house now. Let me get him. I'll send him over. And we also have a tractor. So because I was clearing the driveway here for 2 hours yesterday after this last snow. She said, Steve's on the tractor. Let me go get him. And so I went over there, cleared out around his shed. And I thought, well, duh, what he needs is the wood from the shed. So I said, listen, let me go get my Sasquatch son. I've got an 18-year-old son, Trace.
And he's tall and strong.
He's a beast. I call him Sasquatch.
Yeah.
He calls me midget. So there you go. So I went and I called him and said, hey, I need your help. So he came over. And it took us a couple hours. We got everything plowed. It's a long. It's at least a quarter-mile drive up and back each time with a tractor.
Yeah.
But we cleared out all around his woodshed so he can get his vehicle all the way through there. Made a whole loop around it, which is in the city that's probably the equivalent of clearing out like 6, 7, 8 driveways or something. There's a lot to do. And then we started hauling the wood up. So we're all in bucket after bucket load of wood and stacking it. Another bucket, go stack it, another bucket until I ran out of fuel. And then we're going to go back again here. It's I don't know, 35 below wind chill or something today. It's a little chilly. We're going to I got him. He's got plenty of wood, so he's good to go for now. But we'll go completely restock him and get him set for the winter here. But anyway, so I posted about that on Nextdoor. Not it's not about a pat on the back scenario, but rather
a story.
It's to hopefully spark. Because it is cold and it's a kind of this is a tough winter for a lot of people, especially some older folks. Yeah. So it's like, reach out to your neighbors and say, hey, do you need a hand? And if you do, how can I be helpful?
Right.
And, that goes so far, so far. Ed, when we were stacking the wood, Ed said he called Yo, who wasn't home yet.
His wife.
She was in tears. She was in tears because somebody would stop and take the time to
help.
That. Yeah. Super cool. So I posted about it just to let people know, like, hey, reach out to your neighbors. Like, don't just take your snowblower out, clear your driveway when your neighbor, can't even get out with a shovel or, whatever. Help someone out.
So then he shared the story on Nextdoor, and the response was unbelievable. And it really just reconnected with the same theory that really runs true with every single thing that we do, together, individually, collaboratively with our family, with our clients.
Relationships.
It's all about relationships. All about relationships, which really is firing a need that we've been talking about since we met. As part of the spinoff from DIY is the relationships component. In 2023, we have a lot of ideas for 2023. They're on the vision board. We're going to have to divide and conquer here.
There's a lot of projects.
Yeah. But the relationship piece, I think, is worth touching on coming into 2023, as we're in the month of December. And it can be a really hard month for a lot of people for a myriad of reasons, right? Loss is a real thing. Depression is a real issue out there. Anxiety issues are a real issue out there. And of course, post-COVID, there's all kinds of we both feel medical counterparts that have been very much ringing true as we work and are a part of conversations with our friends, our family, our clients. So in doing so, you should tell them about the relationships spinoff, the idea that you've been kind of mulling over that we're going to maybe push through in 2023.
Yeah, there'll be more to come on that, but in a nutshell, looking at putting together, just kind of, I guess, in a good way to explain it is sharing our story, and in terms of how to really foster and continue to grow a strong relationship built upon what is really just one word, and that's appreciation. Because if you think about it, any relationship you have, if you think about, not necessarily a couple relationship, but if you think about like a friendship even, why are you friends with that person? Why do you maintain that friendship with that person?
Right.
And think about why maybe have some relationships with, say, a friend, why have they shattered? Mm-hmm. And it always boils back down to, in my opinion, one word, and that's appreciation.
Right.
You are friends with this person because you feel appreciated. Simple as that. And if you don't feel appreciated anymore, you look at that friendship in a different light.
Right.
I would even argue that in terms of like a loving relationship, and I've got many friendships with many guys, gals, truly a loving relationship with them. It's a friendship, but a loving one. And I would argue that appreciation is even like in a couple relationship, appreciation is the very base level, even before love.
Right.
Because you can love someone, but if you don't feel appreciated, it will damage that relationship. Mm-hmm. So if that's kind of the crux of, I guess, what we'll be teaching through this is how to build and maintain that level of appreciation through kind of a visual analogy, which I won't go into right now, but a visual analogy that is building an upside down fire.
Fascinating, by the way.
Sounds crazy, but it's actually really cool.
So
it's the
cool.
best. It's the best way to build a fire. It's the easiest way to build a fire, and it's the way to make sure your fire doesn't go out when you're trying to build it.
Just like a relationship.
Exactly. So there's a lot of analogies.
So I just have to preface that we have Allie who's helping us with social, and she's going to be going out into the woods, down to the creek with Steve.
Oh boy.
And there's going to be a bucket filled with wood. He's actually done this for the Scouts. Like you taught all the boys how to do this. He will show you how to start a fire with wet wood. It's crazy. It's absolutely a remarkable thing.
Yeah, I did it with a group of young boys were in the city, and they had
never. Neither had the parents, by the way.
Yeah, so I took a 5-gallon bucket. I let them everything I was using to make the fire was sitting in a 5-gallon bucket of water, and I told them I was going to make a fire out of it, and of course they didn't believe me. And afterwards, they were all quite intrigued.
Yeah. And the thing, it is a perfect analogy when you talk about relationships, for sure. Yeah. For sure. So as we are kind of unraveling what's gone on in 2022, which has been a heck of a year, there's been a lot going on professionally and personally. Lots of ups and downs, not only just in growth together, but just as a, city, a country, a world. Like there's been a lot that's happened in the past year.
It's really a story of perseverance.
It really is.
Pushing through.
And listening to our young people, like we just did an interview with Allie, and really listening to the perspective of our young people and what they think versus what we think.
Allie's a remarkable young lady.
She is.
There are exceptional people, and I would say she's one of them.
Absolutely.
She would be a fantastic role model for a lot of young people, young gals in particular, but a lot of young people. Like her story is great.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that in doing so, as we're gearing up for 2023, this podcast has been going, Carter, 4 months now? Yep. So we have I think this is our 24th interview that we'll be doing, closing out the year. The goal in all of this, and we will be really spearheading the new year talking about this, is sharing the stories of people that have something that we hope is valuable and inspiring, whether it be a story from a personal growth experience or a team member. I've had the privilege of interviewing some really dynamic people this year, to include, the CEO of our company, Edina Realty, and the president. I've had an opportunity to meet and grow with some amazing coaches this year that have not only been influential in my personal growth, but my team's growth. Steve and I have had the opportunity through this move to meet some incredible new people that really inspires me. I'm not going to speak for you on how valuable it is to have the guts to make change, right? Like so many of us out there, and I know I can say this for my clients, which I'm not naming names, really get stuck and are fearful of making a major life change. And they just stay the same stay inevitably forever. And life is short, having an opportunity to change things up and experiment with something that could really throw you into a growth mode that you can't even imagine, to me, inspires me every day.
Well, and I would say, because I get to see you with your clients and how you persevere through their fear and help them, because I think a lot of people truly just are unable to see beyond that fear. Like that fear becomes a wall, and there's no seeing beyond it.
Right, that's a big thing.
And I would say that's a really big reason why. I mean, and I would include myself in that, right? I'm not kidding when I said earlier, this whole thing started with Cari saying, because we're in two separate houses,
for a long time.
yeah, both divorced and two separate homes, and where she said, because I cook, so you'll see a lot of videos on DIYdesignerhomestead.com of us cooking or me cooking and
mostly him cooking.
Chopping veggies.
I love to cook, but he's a really good cook.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You are as well, though.
Mm-hmm.
I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, it'll come. Well, with the DIY piece of it, we were talking about St. Anthony and the house.
Oh, yeah.
And moving.
It started. So I was just saying that I too had that level of fear, right? I'll be honest, it's weird with all the changes that have happened because I don't like change. Like
no, he doesn't.
I'm very slow to want to make changes to something. And it's frustrating for me, I'll be honest with you. It's very frustrating for me when change is happening around me. I feel like I spin out, I'm out of control. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are like me that have that block. And it is a block because where I was living was nothing compared to where we are now. And so it really went from Cari she's masterful at this, but what's interesting about it is she knows what people need. And I've watched her equally talk people out of making a change versus making a change because it wasn't in their best interest. She puts in equal effort either way. And that's what's cool about it, because you don't find a lot of people out there that are like, listen, or, maybe you're going to go get your car fixed and they say, yeah, you could do this to your car right now, but you don't really need to yet. Like you still got another year or more on your tires or whatever. You don't have to do this right now. And you just don't find many people that are talking you out of making the sale. So, or making the buy rather. And with Cari, she has to walk that fine line. She knows what people need and she delivers on what they need, but they have to let her do it. And what I found and what I've learned from watching your clients is the best thing a person can do the reason why you hire a Cari is because you want an expert. You want someone that ultimately, at least from my experience, will save you a lot of money, will make you a lot of money. The best of the best, you have to pay for the best of the best, whether you're hiring mentors or, you're going to a specialist doctor or you get what you pay for, right?
Well, that is true.
And I know personally of people in real estate that have really kind of taken a hit because they didn't, they maybe tried to do it on their own or at the end of the day, it's because you just don't know what you're doing. I know a lot of stuff about, I know I have a wide breadth of knowledge, but it's not deep on any subject, right? So I know a lot about a little.
I don't know about that.
Or a little about a lot, I should say. So that's where, like, for someone like me, it becomes dangerous because I'm like, well, I can do that myself. But I find I sometimes get myself in too deep on some things, but you don't really know until you try, right? So I see both sides of that coin. But yeah, I was one of those people that couldn't see beyond that wall, that fear of change, of move.
Yeah. Change is hard for people.
I couldn't see flying the coop. Like, that's flying the coop. That seems scary to me. It's nice and safe and comfortable here. But yeah, we wouldn't be here if Cari hadn't said, we need to remodel your kitchen. You cook all the time. We need to get you a really nice kitchen.
Yep.
And then it's like every surface of the house is touched. And then it's like, well, everything's brand new. Like the roof, the windows, everything. Yeah. Everything was brand new.
It's kind of like anything with housing. It's a can of worms.
And the timing of it, the market, things were a little uncertain and whatnot. So it's like, well, now's the time to sell. Like we're at the peak of this. So let's,
timing, I've said this before, you can't always, rarely does a major life change happen when you're fully ready for it to happen. That's very rare for anybody. You can't plan. Sometimes the stars align and you might not be ready, but you got to go make the leap because it just makes sense. Like the opportunity is there. You might not be ready, but the opportunity is there for you. And so you square peg, round hole it. And then on the back end of all that, you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I got through that. It's painful for a little bit, for long. I say short-term pain for long-term gain. And that works. It really works, folks. It's a real thing. And that is really the inspiration for everything we're doing, everything I'm doing with the team as I'm growing CACG, Cari and Carter Group. The reason for this very podcast, to share those stories, to hopefully inspire even just one person with whatever decision that they're making, or somebody's story may resonate to help them get through a really difficult time in life or a really difficult decision in their life. Not by any means that I may ever even meet that person, but just to make somebody's life a little bit better.
Yeah,
right?
No, as you're speaking, it reminds me, I go back to sharing the story of Trace, my son, and I going and helping the neighbor, because there were people, it is inspiring. When you share these stories, it inspires people to say, hey, I can do this too. Like, it's okay. I can maybe take that wall down a little bit, that fear wall down, and I can see a little bit over the top of it, for example.
Absolutely.
Because like that post that I did on Nextdoor, what happened was there were people jumping into the post saying, hey, I've got some free time. I'm located here. If anyone needs a hand, I can do that. Or,
which is so cool.
And or other people saying, yep, my kids and I, we shoveled 3-4 driveways, or it's like, that's fantastic. That's the whole point.
Absolutely. All over this, guys. I was down with this respiratory thing for like 6 weeks. So it delayed the last half of the year.
I still have it.
It's just been brutal. And so this plan that we had for our Christmas party got really delayed. And I really, really wanted specific people in our community, well, everybody, to get an invite. And I knew there were a few of them that we had reached out to that were expecting the invite, and it didn't go out in the mail. So I was hand delivering the day before the party. And Ed was one of those people. Had I not, I could have easily just come home. I have a whole list of things that need to be done. I'm never done with my to-do list. I could have easily just skipped it, right? I could have just not stopped by, but I did. And by stopping by and spending 15 minutes listening to Ed's story, and I haven't met him in person yet. We've only communicated personally. I've only heard of him, actually. He knows of me, but we haven't actually met. Through that set of dominoes, the outcome is inspiring hundreds of people, which is so cool, and an awareness of what's going on for them so we can continue to help them.
We've adopted them.
We have adopted them. That's really a story that resonates to anything. Like, you can choose to call that friend today or not. You can choose to call your mom and dad today or not. You can choose to go shopping with your kiddo today to have some quality time or not. And if you don't do those things, what are you missing, and what could have sparked a domino effect with an outcome? So the doing is what drives. I could say doing drives the end result. And that's, I think, super valuable to live your life that way.
I think you can leverage that up even more, because what I'm learning is, and again, we don't really get a chance to spend too much time meeting our neighbors out here because we're pretty isolated. Mm-hmm. But the neighbors that I have met, interestingly, they're all of similar mind. They're just not, I think a lot of people don't know how to start helping or whatnot. Yeah. But what I'm finding is, like Mark and Maureen, our neighbors over here, they're already helping Ed and Yo. They're like helping out with some plowing, and if you can leverage your assistance to someone in need by just getting more people involved in helping. Right. You don't have to do everything for them. If you can get a lot of people together that are all willing to go out and provide some help, some assistance, especially at this time of year, like, that's fantastic.
Absolutely. And that just carries through to everything you're doing in your life, whether it be your work life, your personal life, your community life. that contribution of time and taking the time to pause. We're always saying, because we're being pulled a million different directions, I always say that. And there's so much glitter out there. There's so much distraction. My whole team would say that. Social media alone is like a huge, huge component of that. Pausing. And Steve and I talk about this all the time, because there's so many reasons to not be present. Forcing, in a good way, being present, like stopping, pausing, saying, I'm going to really take this moment in, have this experience with this person, and be fully present. That would be my takeaway of 2022. Truly, being present. And in 2023,
sorry, I wasn't present.
Yeah, that's my takeaway. You know, I know we're kind of like round table dropping little pieces and nuggets, but I think the real takeaway for this year and what I'm leading into for us and for all things that we're trying to accomplish in 2023 is with intent, purpose and intent, and being present in the experience.
I think my takeaway for 2022 is to be sure and keep your chicken's water warm.
Yeah, so it doesn't freeze. Don't even go down that rabbit hole. Literally. So do you have anything else to share, sir?
I don't think so.
I'm super excited about 2023.
It'll be an interesting year.
I'm super excited to share another opportunity for everybody to meet my love, Steve. Aww. Yep. He's my inspiration every single day.
I'm actually her ranch hand.
Yeah, I know.
I'm also known as the chicken tender.
Oh, there's going to be shirts made with those titles on it, by the way. And in the future, a coffee line and a bourbon line, just FYI, look for those.
Inspiration. Think about, yes.
Yeah. Caffeine and bourbon. What a combination. Oh, that's funny.
That sounds like you could have a whole store on that.
Yeah,
subject.
we could have a whole store. Yeah, we could actually. Well, listen, everybody, we hope that you have a remarkable, amazing final week of 2022. We wish you health, prosperity, and all things wonderful moving into 2023. We're so excited to share stories week after week with you and are excited to continue to grow. Fly the Coop is a podcast. And if you have any thoughts about stories you'd like to hear us talk about, or you want to be perhaps on the podcast, give us a call.
Sounds good. Happy holidays to all of you. Merry Christmas. Mm-hmm. And looking forward to a happy new year.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Bye.